Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:07, good morning. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. In 30 minutes, we're going to do a deep dive into the rare earth issue and President Trump's plan for Project Vault, $12 billion of rare earth stockpile, similar to the oil reserves, and getting Alaska into the game on the exploration and the reduced reliance on China for rare earth minerals. Anthony Huston, Graphite One, will be our guest in 30 minutes. 8:05, former Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares, started a brand new initiative called Fair Maps in Virginia to push back on the redistricting effort of the Democrats. And at 8:35, Tom Rousey, also of WJLA, on today, a big day here for eventual ice and snow cleanup in D.C. roads. Or we'll just wait until May. It's Larry O'Connor with Bethany Mandel of the Mom Wars podcast and Substack. Good morning, Bethany.
Good morning. What a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yes, and joining us right now, I think you would refer to Nick Minock as a mensch. Is that appropriate? Is mensch a good descriptor for Nick Minock?
He's a bulldog.
Yes, a Menchie bulldog. He is the local reporter at ABC 7 WJLA, and of course his local reporting makes national news on a regular basis. And boy, this latest one is a doozy out of Loudoun County. Nick, good morning. Thanks for joining us. And I've appreciated your reports there in Rosslyn outside the WJLA studios. You're clearly you're a Michigan man because you're right at home with all this snow and ridiculous behavior.
Hey, I don't mind it, but this ice is next level. We really didn't have to deal with this kind of ice in Michigan and Minnesota. So, I mean, we all still have to be careful out there.
That makes me feel better, honestly.
It's true. It really does. All right. So, Loudoun County, you, of course, have been tracking this story, a tragic story where a student was killed. Still needs to be investigated fully. Will you tell me? I mean, it was as a result of a school district employee in a maintenance vehicle. We're still not sure. Is it still being investigated at this point?
It's still being investigated, and at 7 News we'll stay on top of it and let you know if the Commonwealth Attorney's Office or Sheriff's Office charges that LCPS employee. So, yeah, a few weeks ago now, you might recall that a student was killed on her way to school, walking to school. We believe she was in a crosswalk. She was going to school, and she was hit and killed by a driver.
Horrible. And
we are told, and we are pretty certain, this is an LCPS employee who's now on paid administrative leave as the investigation continues. And usually what you would think happens after something like this, especially on a night that the school board meeting was happening, that school board members in Loudoun County would talk about ways on how to improve student safety, ask questions on how did this happen?
Yeah.
How could we prevent it? And talk about distracted driving, speeding in school zones, especially with school employees who they have control over. Those are their employees. But no, instead the Loudoun County School Board talked about their safety behind closed doors. If you look at the agenda of the school board meeting, it talks about how they were going to go into closed session, and they were going to talk about terrorist activity and how to respond to that.
Hold on. I just want to make sure everybody knows that term, terrorist activity, that's how they described this session. Those are
and
their
not parents,
words.
Not actual terrorists, by the way, not Islamic, ISIS people, but parents.
Well, that's what it turns out to be, yeah.
So people gather in the room for this closed session, and in the room you've got the school board, and their regular meeting room you've got the school administrators, you've got a few other staff members, and about 30 people no one seems to recognize. They are actors brought in to portray parents. They're sitting down where parents would be sitting during a regular school board meeting waiting for public comment or just listening and sitting there seeing what's happening. 30 actors were brought in by the Loudoun County School Board.
Yeah, they paid them.
We're working on that. I can't imagine that they weren't paid or compensated because
it could have been from the local community theater group, I guess.
We will try to find that one out. We'll see if LCPS honors our FOIA for that information to see how much potential tax dollars were spent on these actors. So what happens, and this is all according to people who are in the room, who were just shocked that this was happening. All of a sudden, the actors are running and screaming and yelling, and school board members are told where to hide, where to run, when to fight. And this was the training. And apparently, well, according to sources in the room, one of the parent actors brought a toy gun. So that was the scenario in which they were playing out and how to respond. And one of the parents' names was Mr. Smith. Why that matters? Well, you might recall in 2021, Scott Smith, a real Loudoun County parent, went to a school board meeting after his daughter was sexually assaulted in the girls' bathroom by a boy. And he was arrested at that school board meeting in 2021. You might also recall 7 News' reporting from last year about how boys are being investigated by Loudoun County School Board for asking why there was a girl in the boys' locker room, using the boys' locker room repeatedly, and the boys being filmed by the girl. Those boys were investigated, found guilty by the school board for Title IX sexual harassment. And one of the boys' last name is Smith, and his parents' name is Smith. Now, you might think, okay, Smith is a generic last name, but in Loudoun County, when we've seen these instances, I mean, that stings a little bit for those families.
Yeah. What an incredible insult. Are you hearing from parents in response to the school board basically labeling them terrorists and doing disaster training about how they might possibly interface with these terrorist parents?
Yeah, I think these parents are just shocked in one way that they would do this, but in another they're not so shocked because this has happened so often in Loudoun County. And another thing I'll point out is that the school board chair, she's new. This was April Chandler's first school board meeting as school board chair. And this is what she decides to do on the day that a student was killed, talking about their safety. And according to people in the room, she continued to call parents agitators and disruptors. And she kept on pointing back to the October school board meeting of last year, around October, when parents, came to the school board meeting to stand up for those boys who were being investigated by the Loudoun County School Board. The school board chair at the time interrupted those parents. Scott Smith showed up to that meeting and stood up for those boys. And April Chandler, the new school board chair, calls parents agitators and disruptors. And apparently that's how they parents. They don't refer to them as parents, families. I've met many of these parents. They go to church in our community, different churches. They're nice people. Their heart is for their kids, for their families. But April Chandler refers to them as disruptors and agitators when they come to school board meetings.
Wow. And so they had to have some sort of. I mean, this is a scene from The Office. This really is, where they bring in actors to portray parents that are described by the school board itself as terrorist. They were practicing for a terrorist threat. So, is there any end result from this? I mean, did they reach some sort of? I'm sorry, I'm rarely rendered speechless, Nick. But it's just a bridge too far at some point. They literally do look at the parents this way, and they think of them as a threat. What comes of this, though? What has the reaction been? And has anyone from the school board spoken on the record to you about it?
No one has spoken on the record yet. I mean, we shared the news yesterday, and it has been spreading like wildfire. It is getting a lot of reaction from parents. I think people are still learning about it. It's still very fresh. What comes of this training? Gee, I don't understand the point of this training, to be honest with you. I'm all for safety for everybody, whether it's for school board members, administrators, parents, kids. Everyone should feel safe and be prepared, right? Yeah. But when you go to a school board meeting, this school board already spends millions of tax dollars on security. So what was the point of this training? Yeah. Because when you go into a school board meeting at Loudoun County, I can't even bring a water bottle in. Like the last time that I went to a school board meeting, they made me take off my shoes, and they were convinced that I had something in the inserts of my shoes.
That's First Amendment intimidation right there.
They wouldn't let me bring in a metal water bottle. They won't let parents bring in a snack or food, and they make them sit there during dinner time waiting for their 1 minute to speak. Amazing. During public comment. I mean, they won't let people bring anything in. I mean, they have metal detectors. They have security there. So there's no way someone could bring in a gun to the school board.
One other question. I'm sorry. Mike Chapman, the sheriff of Loudoun County, and his deputies, they're charged with keeping safety at these. Please tell me that the sheriff's office was not involved in this safety training. I can't imagine them participating in this.
So it sounds like there was a representative from the sheriff's office at that training. I don't know who, but according to the agenda, there was someone there. And according to people in the room, there was someone there. I will say, when it comes to the school board meetings, after the 2021 arrest of Scott Smith, the sheriff's office pulled out of the school board meeting security agreement.
Oh, they did? Oh, okay. We don't want anything to do with it. Okay. All right. I feel a little better. All right.
The Loudoun County School Board hired private security from then on out, and they're spending tax dollars on private security for everything.
And actors. All right. Find out how much the actors got paid. I want to know if they used union actors, or are they trying to bust actors' equity while they're out there. Nick Minock, WJLA. Great stuff. Stay safe on those dangerous streets of Rosslyn, by the way, for your stand-ups, and we will talk to you again soon.
Talk to you soon.
It is 7:18. Sorry, I can't get enough of that story. They are the best. They are the best. Let's hire actors, and we'll do a big group improv. Yesterday, we talked about the president's announcement that they will be closing the Trump Kennedy Center, TKC, for 2 years, beginning July 4th, for a historic renovation. I speculated that there might be asbestos involved in this renovation. They started to scope it out and realized, this is going to be so extensive. We can't have audiences and artists and people. Well, we're doing all this asbestos abatement. If we do, that'll slow things down. It could take years and years and years. So they're shutting it down for 2 years to get it done. And, of course, the fallout has been as expected, with most people saying, it doesn't really need it. They're just doing this because so many acts and shows and artists were canceling and ticket sales were down and the place was a disaster, so they're just doing this instead. Roma Daravi, who is the spokesperson for the Trump Kennedy Center, put out this statement. In less than 1 year, Trump has balanced the budget, raised over $130 million from donors, and secured $257 million from Congress. We are financially stable, yet the building is still physically in trouble. Decades of gross negligence left the institution with a broken budget, $100 million operating deficit, $26 million bottom line deficit, and $250 million in deferred maintenance needs. That's true. A quarter billion was given to them. They used it to pay themselves and to keep things going through COVID. They didn't use it for the building as it was intended. There will be an intensive restoration and beautification project. A temporary closure is the most logical choice to allow for comprehensive renovations, efficient project completion, and responsible use of taxpayer dollars. And listen, Trump knows how to build things, and it is going to be done, and it'll be beautiful. The question now is, what about the artists? What about the people who work there? What about the National Symphony Orchestra? Are they going to be able to put together a tour to keep those musicians employed? Will they be able to use a different venue, maybe the National Theater on Pennsylvania Avenue, just down the street from the White House? I mean, there needs to be some contingency plans so that we can keep some shows going, I would think.
I wonder if it's a play to break the stranglehold of the unions also there. I am obviously concerned about, people's jobs and keeping musicians employed, but I was there for the October 7th play last week, and I overheard workers saying, because it was the night before the Melania show. Yeah. And the premiere. And I overheard workers saying, what about the wires for the sound? And they said, I'm not going to let them use my wires. They can bring their own wires, talking about the people who were affiliated. The cables for the sound system. Uh-huh. Yeah. The people that were affiliated with the show, the unionized sound workers didn't want to let the wires that belonged to them be used for such a thing. They wanted the Melania folks to be handling. Right. And so I suspect that there might be a little bit of that in play also.
Yeah, maybe. Based on the terms of the rent. Here's the thing in DC is not a right to work so-called state. So, like, for instance, I don't have a choice. I have to be a part of the union for radio hosts.
Right.
That's right. There's a union for radio hosts.
But I
don't know if they have that opportunity. I don't know. Who knows? I would think that just renovating the building is not going to make the collective bargaining agreements null and void. I wouldn't think. Well, you're right. And there is a move in theaters right now to deunionize. In fact, the Music Center in Los Angeles, which is basically the comparable building. There was a time, like the Kennedy Center, the Music Center, the Lincoln Center, the theater I used to manage, the Schubert Theater, which is a privately owned theater. There was this boom in the 60s, mid-60s to mid-70s, where all of these, and they all look alike. They all act alike. They're all, and that's why I'm like, because I know these buildings. It's like, I bet there's asbestos. I bet that's a big part of this.
Yeah.
They were all built around the same time, but the L.A. version, the Music Center there, the Amundsen Theater, they are, for the first time in their history, 50-year history, they are booking in a non-union musical tour, a Broadway tour, onto their season this year. So it's non-equity actors coming in. Now, the Stagehands Union is still ensconced there, but, I mean, this could be a union move as well. I do not know. Here's what I do know. The president of the Kennedy Center, the Trump Kennedy Center, Rick Grinnell, His Excellency, the ambassador, he will be our guest on this program tomorrow. And we can ask him those questions.
I want to ask him a question, and I want to put it on the radar for our listeners. There's a pretty strong piece in the Washington Post about the fact that there is a quote-unquote self-inflicted crisis created by Trump and Grinnell for the fact that this closure is not because of structural instability, but because of the fact that a lot of acts have been canceled. Rick Grinnell posted that story with this commentary that I think is very important. I asked the Post reporter if she knew what debt reserves were. She didn't. So not only did she not know that there was this question of the fact that the Kennedy Center under Biden was pulling out of their debt reserves to pay operational costs, but she didn't even know what that was, let alone that they were doing it. So she had a very basic non-understanding of how the world works, let alone how the Kennedy Center had been operating.
Right, because the Washington Post likes to pick up the conventional wisdom narrative that is.
Yeah. And so I would caution people to read that report with that extreme grain of salt that the reporter did not even know what she was talking about when she decided to pick up her pen.
You should use as much salt as in the Dead Sea right now when you read anything from the Post. All right, Rick Grinnell on this story joining us tomorrow.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37. Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 3rd day of February. And a busy one at that, as Congress is hoping to resolve the partial shutdown right now. And we are, in fact, holding our breath. All right, no, we're not holding our breath anymore. Coming up at 8:05, Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares, former, has a brand new gig with Fair Maps in Virginia. And talk about fighting against the redistricting nonsense from the Democrats. And at 8:35, Tom Rousey, transportation reporter from WJLA, will give us the latest on the lackluster efforts by the District of Columbia to clean up the snow and the ice. Maybe today's the day with some temperatures getting above freezing finally. Larry O'Connor with the Mom Wars Substack proprietrix, Bethany Mandel. Good morning, Bethany. Thanks for being here, as always.
It is my pleasure. It is so fun spending my morning with you.
Well, thank you. And it'll be even more fun to bring in Anthony Huston, CEO of Graphite One. He works with graphite and critical minerals out of Alaska. And you must have been plugged in on President Trump's announcement yesterday for Project Vault. Lay this out for us, because we don't know enough about this issue, the competition with China, and the ability for America to sort of be independent of foreign influence on these rare earth minerals. First of all, what is the Project Vault? Is it akin to the oil reserves, petroleum reserves that were set up by President Eisenhower?
Well, good morning, Larry. Good morning, Bethany. Yeah, it definitely is. It's something that President Trump, under his administration, has created to really revitalize the domestic mining industry and to benefit U.S. companies who rely on critical minerals, like Graphite One for that matter. And what we're going to do is be able to have these critical minerals at a time when if we go to war, if there's anything that happens throughout the world and it stops any production or supply chain issues, we're going to have our own supply right here in the United States. I mean, using graphite. Sorry, go on.
Well, I just wanted to jump in because I think most people think mining, copper and iron and maybe coal and maybe oil. That's all sort of old 19th century or early 20th century technology. We don't need that anymore because we're high tech. But it's actually quite the opposite. It's more critical than ever, isn't it?
Absolutely. Everything that we use and see today and touch really comes from oil. And it's no different from graphite. The U.S. sits 100% import reliant on natural graphite, with China controlling over 90% of it for global processing. And by 2030, the U.S. graphite deficit will grow to more than 500,000 tons per year. And that's where Graphite One comes in. Well, Graphite One is one of the top 3 largest graphite assets in the world, and here it is in the United States and Alaska. And at this time, we're building out the domestic supply chain for natural graphite, which, again, is essential for lithium-ion batteries, fuel cells, next-generation energy technologies, as well as multiple defense technology platforms.
What if the Chinese just pulled the rug out from under us tomorrow and said, we won't be supplying you with that? First of all, is that a possibility? And second of all, what would that mean on a real level as far as our national security and, our way of life?
Well, the way I always look at it is never bet against the United States. And so if that were to happen, I know that we could get things into operation pretty quickly. What's really interesting about our project in Alaska is this project's never been put into production, but guess what? It was used in World War II for making steel. And so graphite gets put into steel. In fact, up until 2020, there was more graphite and steel in the world than there was in lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries now have surpassed the amount of graphite in lithium-ion batteries than there is in steel. But that being said, we've done this before, and we're going to do it again. And I really believe that under this administration, under President Trump, it's time to go. And we're saying that ends now.
We're speaking with Anthony Huston of Graphite One. We're talking about the Rare Earths Mineral Initiative from the Trump administration and a lot of policies connected with that. When the president was in Davos, he sort of weaves and winds his way around his teleprompter sometimes. And when he was talking about Greenland, they mentioned rare earth minerals. He goes, the real problem here isn't rare earth minerals. Rare earth minerals are everywhere. The issue is extracting them. That's what the real focus needs to. Can you sort of expand on that? What is the process here? And do we, with Alaska in and of itself, do we have the solution right below our very feet?
Well, we do, and that's something that I've been working on for the last 14 years. So I started the company 14 years ago, and watching really where the United States was so reliant on China, and it's been that way for 34 years, like I said. And to his credit, he is the first president to really stand up and start vocalizing the fact that we are so reliant on other companies and countries, such as China. Again, using graphite as an example, 98% of all the processing is done in China. I think what he was referring to maybe is the processing side, because you're right, there are a lot of critical minerals throughout the world. We happen to have the largest graphite asset right here in the United States, but it's the processing. And that's the part that we're bringing back to the United States, is the processing side. Because it's one thing to take it out of the ground. It's another thing, what do we do with it once it's out of the ground?
And by the way, I just want, before I throw it over to you here, Bethany, I want to point out, Mr. Huston here, I have no idea what his politics are, but you participated with President Biden in the last administration to try to set up some tariffs. But nobody talks about this, but at the time, Biden set up 25% tariffs on Chinese graphite at the time. You'll work with whatever administration takes this issue seriously, but you just said that it's President Trump for the first time that you've seen of someone who really has a handle on this. What is that going to mean to your industry going forward? And is it too late on this, or you just said we can never count us out? But what's it going to take to actually get independent here of these countries who control? China, you just said China controls 90% of this. Sure.
Well, I think it's really important because I started the company almost 14 years ago. That I've worked with a lot of different administrations along the way. I work now with President Trump's administration for the second time. And for the first time, I would say this administration is doing more for critical minerals than any administration that's come before him. including even on his first term. And that being said is, we're really, really focused right now in the United States under President Trump to be able to take what we have under our ground right now and bring it into production. And that's helping with cutting permitting, making sure that things are done properly, that they're not sitting in Congress for 2 years waiting around to figure out what we should do next. And so to answer your question, I think that under this president, current regime and in the administration, we are about to see things that have never been seen before. I think over the next 36 months, there's going to be projects like Graphite 1 get put into production. There's going to be major copper companies that are going to put into production, and we are going to be no longer relying on any other country.
So one interesting quote that Secretary Scott Bessent said when this was announced was, he said, economic security is national security, and a country does not have sovereignty if we don't have control of our critical minerals. That idea of economic security is national security, that I know that you've worked with other administrations, across the aisle, but is that a message that you heard from Democrats? Because that sounds uniquely Trumpian.
I would say that they've become laser focused under Trump to make sure that we are going to squarely get this done. Because you're right, it's been spoken about for the last it goes back to Obama. And I would tell you right now that right now in this administration, the folks that they've brought on are wicked smart, wicked focused, and everyone is working and the oars are in the water going in the same direction. That is majorly different from any other administration that's been in place for the last 14 years.
Anthony Huston, have you been to Greenland? Have you scoped it out?
I've never been to Greenland because we've got enough graphite right here in the United States.
Good answer. All right, Anthony Huston, listen, don't be a stranger. We want to learn more about this. This is obviously a critically important issue. Shows similar to ours are not taking it as seriously and doing deep dives like this. We could go on, but it's a great start and hopefully the beginning of a long relationship here on the program. So we want to talk to you again. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Bethany. Have a great day. Take care.
It is 7:45, WMAL traffic and weather. Everybody across the entire Washington region are now searching Graphite 1 to check the stock out, to see what it is, see what the P&Ls are looking like. It's not a bad idea. Heartbreaking story out of Arizona that involves the media. Savannah Guthrie, of course, host of the Today Show, who is currently in Italy getting ready to co-host the 2026 Winter Olympics for NBC, has found out that her mother, Nancy Guthrie, is missing. And as this story sort of developed yesterday, Bethany, where we saw it during the show, and you said, this sounds really, really awful. We now have learned just how awful it is. Because my initial instinct was, oh, gosh, maybe she has dementia. She wandered off. They can't find her. But it appears the evidence suggests that she was abducted.
So I had said, I'd shared an anecdote off air about a family member who, we put air tags in her shoes because we're afraid of this from a dementia point of view. But then some of the TMZ coverage said suspicious circumstances, and I was kind of like, this sounds sus. This sounds weird. But I've also heard that she's, probably going to pull out of her coverage of the Winter Olympics because she's so obviously.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, she's her heart is back in Arizona. It's so sad because she has really featured her mom a great deal on the show. She's a personality that a lot of Today Show watchers are familiar with. But I think that this is very scary for anyone who works in media, because we're always concerned about the impact on our families, for us speaking out. Yeah. I know there's no love lost, but, CNN's Jake Tapper and Dana Bash had protesters outside their home interacting very aggressively with their children. This is an increasing. There's no love lost there, but obviously, that is an incredible step too far. And I think my worst fear as someone who works in media is that this was related to Savannah's work and that her mom was targeted because of her public profile.
God forbid. Well, her mother lives in Pima County, which is close to the border. There's a lot of criminal activity there as well. Her sister had enjoyed dinner with their missing mom hours before the abduction, and there was blood found alongside signs of forced entry in the house. So keep them in your prayers. 7:55.